So I kind of finished Suzukuri dungeon, and I'm saying that because there's one missing CG I just don't know how to get. I thought it was like, oh, maybe it's because of the harem ending I got, and you get that from what I assumed was talking to everybody and just getting no ending, which means you run out of turns. But then I tried it again, and I still got that same stupid ending. And then I thought I was like, oh, maybe I have to cap out the last town, but then I saw the interactions and it's like there's no more, so I was like, oh, it's not this either, and I just gave up because the gameplay itself became a chore and I just didn't want to do it anymore. I'll talk about some of that later in the spoilers, but right now I'll try like saying some good points on it. Like the art itself is stupidly improved compared to the original Kohime that I read. And it's fair because I think that is like 10 years apart, and I saw some of the other VNs in between, and yeah, the art does get better per entry. I still feel like a lot of the art in this one is better than the other ones, aside from like lighting and stuff like that. But let's say like Shunron or Genjo and the other titles, right? She has a massive 5 head for a lot of it, and it seems like every entry they lower their hairline by like half a centimeter, and now it's finally like, hey, you look kind of hot now, you don't look weirdly bald. Another thing I liked is the interactions between the characters and these generic mobs are actually pretty funny. Like there was one where there's like these 2 wolf dogs, and one of them was like, hey, when are you gonna marry my sister? She's into you. And it's like, yeah, I kind of don't want to, but she kind of made me her bitch. It's like, oh, you suck. It's like, I guess you're gonna get married. It's like, yeah, fuck you, man. And it's funny. And like, they're probably the highlight of the VN. I liked it a lot. Like, it was so good that the talking events, which should be a larger factor, is actually worse in comparison. Like, the dungeon layout is also not anything new. It's pretty fun for like the first hour or two until you see how undercooked it is. And I'll talk about not spoilers, but later on where the gameplay is, since a really downer thing. Then there's Karen, which is gonna be weird because there's 2 fucking Karens in the title. So this is Karen with an I. It's also a lot more enjoyable to go through, but that's from like the experience of the first VN, because the first VN, she was a fucking bitch. And the thing is like, yes, because technically you are an enemy and they're like anti-men type of thing, but she's a lot better in this timeline. But who knows, maybe in the, I think it was like the 4th entry, I think that's hers, is like the Gi territory. Maybe she's really nice in that one. Maybe they rehauled her personality, I don't know. But yeah, I liked her a lot, she was really funny. But like, that's about it. Like, the overall plot isn't anything to write home about. Like, there's all these events happening, and like, oh, all of them will combine together and make something cool, but nothing really happens. I'll talk about it in the spoilers, it's very short. And like, the talking events range from like pretty okay to just like, oh, this is porn again. The porn itself is nice, and it's actually spaced out a little better than a lot of other titles I read, right? And I think a lot of it's just like, well, you have to do the dungeon defense thing again to get more points, so you have to rest, or you need to get a higher dungeon variety, or you get a higher dungeon level, or you have to get more rooms. It's always something, and it's like, oh, something to build over. The little amount it spaces between improves it, because otherwise I'd be like, oh, this is boring. And like some of them, it's like Karen with an eye is really boring, because by that time you have everything, it's like, oh, it's just straight up, it's sequentially, it's always the same damn thing. It's got boring really fast. But like I said before, it's nowhere near as good as the weird shit talking some of these mobs do, where it's always like, I kind of feel bad because Katsuto is always like the butt of the joke because he's pretty shitty, he's pretty weak overall. But a lot of them is like, oh, now we talk about this random guy who's eating all his apples, and it's like, oh, did you learn the lesson? And it's like, no, fuck you, you ate all my fucking apples. And he just runs off. It's like, I know where you live. And it's just stupid shit, it's funny. And even the talking events, the quality goes really down after the Shoe Sisters, which is the 4th and 5th unit you get. After that, it's like, the problem is all these characters are very one note, but with all the interactions, you gain some characteristics between them. You're like, oh yeah, they're still kind of one note, but she's still kind of cool, I guess. Like Keifa, her whole thing, it's like her thing that you change from the original, right? Which is like, oh, I hate men and I love women, but I really love Karen, and that's her character. But you know, she's also very smart financially. She's good with magic. She can make potions. She makes freaky potions. She likes cats. It's like little things like, oh, little increases where, yeah, it's still one note because by the end of the title, she's still like, oh yeah, Karen's the best and men kind of suck, but are not as much as before and stuff like that. And you don't get these with some of the other characters where, like Renfa, in this one's like, oh, she's the hero and also she likes manga. What else? Oh no, that's it. Sharon or whatever. What? She's childish and she likes food and she wants to be a better adventurer. Or what else? No, nothing really. Even like the most boring one, which is like Karen with an O. Actually, she's pretty boring. It's like, oh, she likes lifting, but then during the interactions, you're teaching, not you, but like the whole dungeon is like, oh, let's learn history. Oh, let's learn math. Oh, nah, you figure out that she fucking can't read without saying everything out loud. It's all these stupid little things like, oh, that was kind of funny. But yeah, it's just like halfway through, the characters become kind of boring, and they also take a lot fucking longer. Like the cat one, I forgot her name, like Minmu or something. Then it's like 15 levels of fucking spam to get all her stuff done. The problem is you have another character after that's also done with the same dungeon, and that's the hardest fucking dungeon in the game. And it's not the last one, it's the middle one. It's stupid. And it's also kind of weird, like the last 4 characters are from the Go Nation. And then there's like 5 or 6 other people from Karen's region just not included at all. And I think the concept is like, well, Karen with an eye is a demon in this one, so everything that she knows will be part of the demon realm. And these are not units that you collect, these are just characters that are over there. And I guess that makes sense, and they just picked probably the most famous ones because I also liked them in the original one anyway. But whatever. So in terms of gameplay, it's the bare minimum roguelite, because when you reset, because you fucking can't win the first game, it's always, I think you can only beat it in the 3rd round. I beat it in 5 rounds, but overall that's because I keep trying to get more routes and I ran out of turns. So all you get back after a new game is like, oh, you get your levels and how many times you upgraded the guy, right? And the units that you've acquired, but not the story units. No, you still have to do the plot for them to get them back. But you don't keep your money, you don't keep your traps, and you don't keep your room expansions. And the room expansions are fucking expensive, and so are the traps in a way. But the thing is, money becomes useless halfway through. There's no point to money. I don't think I even got new traps in the 4th dungeon, or maybe I think I like 2. And it's because they gave up on the whole concept altogether, because the traps suck after the 3rd dungeon. The durability kind of sucks, the math between them kind of sucks. And the thing is, if a unit passes a room that has a broken trap, you lose points. It's fucking stupid. And other stats like I put a fountain, and the fountain is supposedly 50% chance to stop the enemy units from moving for that 1 turn. It feels like that works like 5% of the time, because I think there's a fishing hole one, and I saw like 2 of the units in like a 20 unit run, only 2 stopped there. So that is not 50%, asshole. But whatever, that's another thing. So most of these traps, or the better ones, are very expensive. They're like 8,000, 10,000. I think the electric one is the really good one that's like 5,000. Except they all suck, and by the time you have a lot of money, they're no longer useful at all. Your units are the best thing, and it's the only thing you really need. And everything else you have in your dungeon are to gain more points. So you put the casino, you put the Karen statue, you put the fountain to increase like how fun this dungeon is, right? To get more points and to get more money. And it's like, great, it's fucking called Suzukuri Dungeon, and it's really just a freaking wall of units. Just give me a fucking dungeon that's linear, and I'll just put my units and it'll be a gauntlet, and overall it'll be the same damn thing. It's whatever. And that's what sucks, because like in the beginning it's like, oh yeah, I can make my traps. It's kind of expensive. Oh yeah, that's another thing. They're expensive and you can't move them around. So let's say you put a saw blade on the left room. Hey, you want to move it to the right? Same 2,000 gold or whatever it is to move it. It's like, what do you mean? I have parts. Maybe you have like a moving fee. It's like, no, we're going to dismantle it, put it over there, and cost the 3,000 gold again. It's like, what the fuck? And because the traps are so shit, after a while you don't need them, right? But it's like, what if later, like, hey, remember that saw blade? Here's a level 3 saw blade, and then you have that. It's like, oh, now it's no longer 3,000, maybe now it's like 10,000 gold. And that's a way to spend your gold, because halfway through, not halfway, like 3/4 way through, which I had no longer any need for money, I had like 200,000 gold left, because guess what? Every run I get like 12,000 gold, and there's nothing to spend it on. So outside of that, the game's difficulty is not dependent on how smart you are. It's dependent on how stupid you can break the game. So let's say you're playing a random RPG and there's this one dungeon that's really good if you have like 3 mages. But you have to build your guys. So what if you never built your mages? That's the whole concept. It's like, do you have this? Then it's easy. If you didn't think about it, well, you're screwed. Like Kazuto, which is the main character, his skill is to repair traps, and you're like, oh, traps, that's the whole basis of the game, it'll be good. It's like, no, it sucks because traps suck. And then Kazuto himself isn't a very good unit. until you know what he's there to supposed to do. He's an XP grinder because he has like this passive that increases the amount of units you can have. So, oh, did you get a really good unit? Guess what? It's level 1, right? You put him in the beginning and level him really fast. And that's his purpose. But no one tells you in the game, oh, that's what he's there for. Food skills is to heal, and healing is good, and you think like, oh, properly timed healing will save you the game, and it does for the first 2 dungeons, and then healing sucks, because you heal so much, but everything gets one-shot, so heals is useless. Karen with an eye teleports all the enemies back to the beginning of the dungeon, which is kind of cool and very important for the first 2 dungeons when your units suck, because you can't one-hit things, right? But once you can, Karen's skill is completely useless and it costs so much MP you never use it. Because the amount of MP you gain during the whole dungeon is like 120 at max. Maybe 130, but that's what it is. Shunron, I think you upgrade attack by like 20%, not good. And that's because of another skill, right? Shunron's skill is like a 3000 barrier. But guess what? You can only get the 3000 barrier after you update her enough to get to level 70. And I beat the whole game without her ever getting there. Because she's a long range character and she doesn't get a lot of XP and it sucked. It doesn't really matter because the best unit is Karen with an O, who increases your crit rate by like 150%. It's like, dude, why did you add another 50%? But that's the best one because that increases damage so much and it enables you to one-shot things. Because any kind of tanking, any kind of healing, any kind of proper thinking is shit compared to just all-out attack. Can you Zerk the first wave of units attacking your dungeon? If you can, you win. There's no losing in that case. And Karen is with an O is broken because of that. And once you learn that, and I only learned that way later, like in the final dungeon, everything becomes so much stupidly easier. There's no more planning needed. So that's the gameplay parts. I think I give an example how to use your gold better. Just don't give extra traps, give incremental traps of higher levels and it will be working fine. It's like, oh, here's a fountain, now here's a royal fountain or something. Just a way to spend your gold. Another thing is like there's these 2 extra dungeons you can do, and one of them is to grind yourself to get to the 3rd map. Because the 3rd map's stupidly hard. I don't think you can beat it in the first run there. It stomps you, right? But the other map is so fucking hard that it is harder than the final dungeon of the plot. There's no point going there unless you're doing like 100% completion rate thing where like I want to level up all my units. You know, there's people like that, fine, it's not for me. But otherwise, there's no point in that unless that's how you get the final CG. And I did like 10 runs and I got nothing. And I looked at the logs, there's nothing for that one. So I think that's not the case, but who knows, maybe it is. You know, I can't say. All in all, the traps are fun when they are still useful and they're not useful after a while. The interactions are funny, some of the talking is funny, the art is good. I'd give it like a 6 or 7 depending on how fast you figure things out, but even then, it's not the most well thought out dungeon stuff. I still like Bunny Black and Bunny Black 2 way more. I saw screens of Bunny Black 3 and I can't say because I didn't play it, but it looked more interesting than this as well. This is actually more bare bones than anything else. But outside of that, it's like in the final dungeon, there's a noble and I don't know his name. It's like, it's not Gilbert, but it's close to it. I think it's like Gable or something. And he gets talked about a lot and all these other nobles. And then once you resurrect Karen, right, with an eye, you have more plot. It was like, oh, they're building up their army, they're training, they're getting more equipment. And you're like, oh, there's gonna be a final battle. But then I looked at logs because after the 15 runs or whatever, I was like level 28 or 30, I forgot what it is, in that map. Because each dungeon has a level. It's, oh, that's how hard it is, right? Oh, and that's something else I have to bring up. But later, anyways, like I ran out of conversations and interactions there. So what actually happened is like there was no purpose. Maybe it's an open-ended thing. I don't know. But anyways, back to what I remember. There's 5 dungeons, right? The 4th dungeon is so much fucking harder than the final dungeon. And it's because the final dungeon is mostly human units. And some of them are strong, but hey, they're very straightforward. But in the 4th dungeon, a lot of it's demons. And they have the golems in there where they're fucking tanking. And then you have the healing units with the tanking units. That whole 4th dungeon is so much damn harder and it's hilarious. Because that's also the one you have to spam the most because there's 2 units you have to get if you want the routes and stuff. Otherwise, I guess you can skip it. And I'm just stupid because I think the better way of doing it is to get to like level 13 or something on that one and go to the final dungeon, do it again another 10 levels, and then go back. And then at that point, I think the levels coincide better. But you never do that because you always do things incrementally because that's how you do it. And they reward you for that in the first 2 dungeons because they give you like a wolf dog thing and a succubus. That's the only 2 special characters you get. They're not even good units, but it's like, oh, hey, you got to level 20 this dungeon, here it is. But then it doesn't happen for the other 3 dungeons. I don't know why. I guess they run out of funding or something. But yeah, that's enough ranting, and the whole thing is like, yes, I would give this a 6 or a 7 depending on my mood. You know, maybe if I wait a month, I'll like, oh, actually, yeah, I had a good time with it. It's a 7. So this is a future edit for the Suzukuri dungeon where, yeah, I actually did finish it. It took me like an extra 3 hours or something. It was annoying. So apparently it really was just do every interaction of the maps, right? The noble doesn't come back at all. So that point I made of like, whoa, you had a whole cool thing of battle. That didn't happen at all, right? What did happen instead was now Karen with the eye is like, hey, we're all cool now, so now I'm gonna invade my own dungeon, prepare it, and let's see if you can beat me. And if you can, cool, right? And that's how it is. It's very unclimactic. I won easily because by the time you get all those interactions, you are like level 80 to 90. So I don't recommend actually completing it or even trying this game outside of, let's say you like one character, I buy it, play it, have fun, but don't 100% like I did. It's not worth it. I changed my mind. I'm pretty sure I'm giving this a 5 now for the overall experience. For 100% type thing. You just play it normally, yeah, I'd give it like a high 6. It was fine.